It seems like feeding your baby solids should be really easy, but just like everything else with baby, it's harder than you think it will be. You're probably thinking like, what? You just feed your baby eats, your baby gets full, mealtime's over. But of course, that's not how simple it is. In this video, we'll talk about good ways of starting solids and alternate ways of what you can do. So there's lots of options, but we're going to talk about some options. But first, hello, my name is Valerie. I blog at babywisemom.com. I've been blogging there since the year 2007. I have 4 children who currently range in age from 12 to 19 years old. I love helping parents, love parenting. I want you to get as much enjoyment from the process as possible, so you just have a happy family. Before you start feeding solids, it's always a good idea to talk to your baby's doctor. It's just wise to make sure your baby's doctor is on board with, yes, your baby is fine to start solids. There's always different ages for what is best, like the best age to start feeding baby solids, and it just changes over time. With my 4 babies, there was a period where it was 4 months old was the time to start, and then 6 months old, and then even like wait beyond 6 months old. So it shifts a lot. So make sure you're aware of what doctors are currently saying. But I also say, like, because it has been such different ages throughout time, over the years, and so many babies have been fine, then it's more about readiness signs that your baby is showing that they can safely eat food than it is about the number of months old your baby is. So that's why it's a good idea to talk to your baby's doctor and just get that second opinion on, yes, your baby can safely start solids now. When you're feeding your baby solids, you still want to maintain that eat, wake, sleep routine. And when you initially start solids, that solid food is just bonus. It's just essentially for fun. And you still want that liquid to be the most important food for your baby. So you don't want to have your baby so full on solids that your baby doesn't take the liquid food. Now, you really want to be careful that you don't fall into a trap of feeding your baby every 2 hours. I often see people who have had their baby on a 4-hour schedule, breastfeeding or bottle feeding, and then they start solid foods and suddenly they're feeding every 2 hours because they feed the liquid and then 2 hours later feed the solids. And then 2 hours later feed the liquids. And then 2 hours later feed the solids. If your baby has been eating on a 4-hour schedule, then your baby doesn't need to move to a 2-hour schedule. 2 hours was like growth spurts for a newborn, right? So your baby who's old enough for solids doesn't need to move to eating every 2 hours. So you want your liquid and your solids at the same time. So here's how you make that happen. What I did with my babies was I breastfed all 4 of my babies, and so I fed them from one breast first at a feeding time. So it's time to eat, feed from one breast, and then we would go to the high chair and do the solid foods for that meal. Then we would move and finish up the other breast. So I fed from both sides every time. If you feed from just one side, then you're going to have to be aware of how long your baby takes to eat and kind of cut that off in half and go back to the same side afterward. But this really worked well so that the baby isn't starving when you're trying to feed solids. So you feed one side so that your baby isn't starving. And also, back up, if you are bottle feeding, then just feed half of the bottle and then move to the solids. So your baby isn't starving. Also, you're keeping the main thing, which is the liquid. That's the most important part of your baby's diet still. And then you're finishing up with the liquid, which, nice to help wash things down and stuff, but you're also not doing a full liquid feeding so that your baby has no desire to even try the solids. When you're first starting solids, it's really smart to just do one meal at a time. You want to make sure your baby isn't allergic. You also don't want to overfill your baby. So just pick one meal of the day to do solids at when you're first introducing. Whenever I introduced a new food, I liked to do it as early as possible in the day, so I tried to do it with breakfast because then I had all day time to watch for allergic reactions or intolerances, and I didn't have that showing up during night sleep. So like if anything was disrupted, it was the day and not our night. There are a lot of different foods that you can start with. You can start with single grains, like rice is a very common one. You can start with different fruits or vegetables. Bananas is a really good first food. Avocados can be. Sweet potatoes can be a good first one. Find out, just decide what you would like to do and start with that food. And when you start, just start with half a tablespoon, which seems like so little, and it is. It's not very much food, but your baby is just a little person. So just half a tablespoon of solid food at first. This is, you're letting their digestive system get used to solid foods. You are allowing them to make sure they're not allergic. You don't want to pump a bunch of food your baby's allergic to into their body. So it's just a nice, easy, safe approach. So I did this for 1 meal a day for 1 week. Just that little tiny bit of food once a day for 1 week. And I should add that during that week, I slowly increased the amount of food. So first day was half a tablespoon, second day was 1 tablespoon, and slowly increased to where it seemed like that was the right amount for my baby. And the amount my babies ate varied very widely. Some ate a ton and some ate very little. In the second week, I kept the same food and just added a meal. So we did breakfast and lunch. And then we moved up to dinner. So by the end of the week, we were doing this 3 times a day. And so we had our liquid and solid feedings 3 times a day. Most babies are going to eat about 5 to 8 tablespoons in the end at a feeding. But like I said, I had one, my oldest, would eat 12 tablespoons of food at each feeding on top of taking a full liquid feeding. So always go with your baby's individual appetite. So week 4 of starting solids, I introduced another food, and I tended to stick with a food group. So with some of my babies, I started with cereals, and with some I started with fruits and a vegetable. It just varied. There wasn't one right or wrong way. It was just whatever seemed best at the time. So week 4 of solids, we're starting some vegetables. So we've got maybe we're going for orange vegetables. Week 4, we're starting orange vegetables. And so we've got our sweet potatoes, our carrots, our squash. And so you do one vegetable, and then a couple of days later, try another vegetable, a couple of days later, another vegetable. You want to keep a couple of days between each new food. And then a couple of weeks later, you can have another type of food group focus. So we're at week 6 now. So you might do green vegetables, and you've got your green beans and your peas. So again, wait a couple of days between each new food. I will mention that a lot of my babies didn't love fruits, and so that's why I started with the vegetables. Fruits have a very strong flavor. Vegetables tend to be more mild, and babies are used to very mild food. So the veggies are kind of a safe way to go. But so at week 8, we're 8 weeks in. This has been a long process, right? It's very slow and steady. That's how I do things. I like to keep things safe, controlled, methodical. So 8 weeks in, then I'm starting a fruit. So again, 2 days between each new fruit. A really good first fruit is bananas. Peaches can be good. Pears, applesauce. Those are some of the more common first fruits. So this is the slow and steady approach to starting pureed baby foods. If you are interested, you could do baby-led weaning instead, which is using chunks of food. And that is a great option, and we won't cover that in this video, but that's another great option a lot of people really like. I never did it with my babies, but it's a super popular method. So if you are interested in that, for sure look into it. I do have some blog posts written by guests who've done it, all about baby-led weaning, and it can be a great way to feed your baby. You can also move faster than I did if you would like. Again, I just like to be careful, make sure I'm watching for allergies, but you can go faster if you feel the need, but do wait a couple of days between each new food. You can also mix up food groups. So you might say, I'm going to do a vegetable and then I want to do a fruit next. If you do, that can be smart to go more than 2 days between, just to give more time to watch for allergies. Like certain food types, food groups are more similar to each other, so like less likely to see allergens come out. So you don't, if you go too fast and your baby has an allergic reaction, then you have to cut out everything, because you have to be confident that you are removing what your baby is allergic or intolerant to. And so if you move too fast, then you have to cut out everything and give it a couple of weeks before you start again. And so if you're just patient and wait amount of time before you introduce, then you're just cutting the one food. For sure, like that's the food. Because the other food was totally fine, and this new food is definitely the one that caused the problem because I waited long enough. So that's my slow and steady approach to starting solid foods. If you have questions, as always, leave a comment and I will answer. And thanks for watching and have a great day.